What's going on, Neon Nation, and welcome back to the Neon Arcade for some more Cyberpunk 2077 content. Today we're talking about Gunplay, where Cyberpunk 2077 has seen improvements from last year's demo to this year's deep dive, what makes good gunplay, and the mechanics and systems driving weighty and satisfying combat. This video will have an emphasis on Cyberpunk 2077, but in all honesty, these principles will apply to gunplay mechanics across all shooters. Let's start off with what I believe is one of the most important elements of gunplay, which is the sound design. This is expressed in the weapon itself, but also the varying surfaces, textures, and elements bullets come in contact with. For example, flesh should sound distinct from concrete, and concrete should sound distinct from tile when it's being fired at. The weapon sounds themselves should give you a good idea on how strong it is, no matter if it's being fired into flesh or floor. I personally think all the weapons in Cyberpunk should have some aggressive undertone to it, and judging by the weapons we saw in the deep dive, I think CD Projekt Red is for the most part doing a good job. The standout is the metallic supersonic clap of the revolver. But the Militech rifle in CE Defender seems a little lethargic in how it sounds and could use a bassier and deeper punch. Couple this with the fact that the animations are akin to you using a chunkier staple gun, it doesn't really embody the raw power of a big heavy weapon. I do want to add that the lack of recoil was in the strength build, and arm augmentations will likely reduce recoil to a certain degree, but regardless, firing the more powerful weapons should be more jarring. This is also where meaty sound design can offset some of these potential lore-based reasons of having subdued recoil. Maybe adding in a slight heads-up display rattle would convey this more appropriately. I also want to add that when it comes to sound design in practice, too visceral and you may experience listening fatigue and overstimulation, and too benign and you may feel like you're just going through the motions without any weight behind your actions. This leads me into the second part of great gunplay, which is realistic physics, animations, and animations that align with the sound design. Animations of not only the kick of the weapon, but the effects of riddling a body with bullets should mesh nicely with how powerful a weapon is. Obviously, a heftier weapon increases your chances of dismemberment in Cyberpunk 2077, which is a potent addition to gunplay, and stagger and wounding mechanics will also have a positive impact on how players perceive certain weapons. The animations of enemies themselves seem to be greatly improved, and I think the physics engine looks fantastic. Seeing an enemy quote-unquote dance as he's being peppered by tracer rounds, or seeing a chunk of a body fly halfway across the room after a grenade detonates blowing off cement chunks from a block that's close enough is really awesome to see and makes the world react more contextually to your arsenal decisions. Dismemberment, staggering, ragdolling, and wounding seem to all find a comfortable niche in the gameplay we've seen so far. Next is variety, customizability, and augmenting how you shoot. This is something that Borderlands 3 has done incredibly well with procedurally generated weapons to boot. Multiple firing modes, variations, different weapon manufacturers, and a ton of unique weapon mechanics make for an addicting shooting experience. Shooting is going to be less arcadey in Cyberpunk, and you will be able to mod your own weapons with attachments, but it's a breath of fresh air for unique gunplay to come back in the mix with BL3, and I hope CDPR infuses some of the same principles here when it comes to unique weaponry, albeit to a less zany degree. Matching customizability with enough variety and addicting but well-paced power scaling of weapons as you use them and level them up can drastically change gunplay from one player to another, which is a big chance for players to find their own unique preferences. The firing modes of Cyberpunk 2077 have been incredible, but I want to see more. Wall-penetrating tech weapons, bullet-bouncing mods, and even shields for melee weapons that reflect bullets have been mentioned, and this helps to nurture a sandbox experience when it comes to gameplay. I just really hope as much care has been put into these mods across all styles of weaponry. Next, let's talk about hitscan versus projectile weapons. Incorporating both gives the player choice on how they prefer to shred their enemies. For clarification, bullets fired from a hitscan weapon will instantaneously reach your target when you pull the trigger. You can think of hitscan weapons kind of like a laser pointer. With projectile weapons, you have to account for travel time and potential bullet drop, and you will have to lead your shots based on your enemy's movement. Projectile weapons can force you to either aggressively lead your shots or only ever so slightly. If hitscan weapons are laser pointers, then projectile weapons are more akin to arrows. Players invariably specialize or are more dominant in one of these types, so adding a balance of hitscan and projectile weapons to the mix allows the player to experiment and really find what suits them. Esports teams that have this variance in weapons in their specific game have players on rosters that specialize in one or the other, and whilst that isn't a competitive setting, the goal of Cyberpunk 2077 is the freedom of choice, so there will be people in either camps, so this is a must. Next up, let's talk about melee combat. More visceral, brutal, and being more combo oriented is what I believe would make for some impactful close combat. Parrying, blocking, counterpunching, the ability to weave slight dodge or strafe mechanics in between jabs and uppercuts, with the enemy having the same arsenal, will be a huge pull for fist-on-fist combat. Throw in combat boosters to augment the speeds at certain intervals, and you have a lot in flux to keep the player intrigued. I'd like to see melee combat ebb and flow from fast-paced moments to more slow methodical plays where you're maintaining more of a gap to reevaluate your attack, and smooth shifting from target to target for pacing purposes. Sound design is again incredibly important here, as parrying and uppercutting and jabbing should be audibly distinct and should feel impactful and not like you're punching a sack of feathers. During the deep dive, I wasn't overly impressed when Sasquatch is punching you after knocking you down. There isn't even a head rattle on the HUD to make the player feel like they're taking a haymaker to the jaw, but this is likely because it's a work in progress and there are other sections of in-game melee combat that sounds and looks a lot better.
But Sasquatch has a different game plan. She's out to jack in and hack us.
Melee-specific weaponry also seems to be quite diverse, which again plays to the freedom and sandbox potential of 2077. Broken bottles, knives, garrote whips, and confirmation of multiple types of katanas with the ability to add mods to these weapons is an incredible pull for those who opt to not use guns. Next we have a fluid cover and snapping system. This is one of the mechanics that are being implemented that worry me mainly due to perspective. It's fairly hard to nail a cover system that allows you to snap to it without seriously hampering perspective and environmental context, which is why Deus Ex offered the ability to swap to third person when in cover. To be honest, I didn't think that was any better, but light magnetism to walls and the ability to aim and prop yourself around them is a really tough element to implement. The more light and fluid and the less clunky, obviously the better, and aiming down sights out of cover should also be responsive. Let me know what you guys think. What is your most important element of gunplay or gameplay, and what mechanics are you really looking forward to? As always, for more Cyberpunk 2077, join Neon Nation by subscribing to the Neon Arcade.